Do you remember growing up, there was this kid in the neighborhood who would always just talk a lot of smack and couldn't back it up? That is what Donald Trump and his team have done with these Epstein files. Right? They, their mouth write a check that their ass can't cash. And we're starting to see that play out, from their base.
Joining us now is Anthony Coley. Anthony used to be the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Treasury for Public Affairs in the Obama administration, and then the head of Public Affairs in the Department of Justice under Attorney General Merrick Garland. He's now, you can see him on MSNBC a lot of days and nights and early mornings. You do that early morning shift over there.
Yeah, way too early. I think that is the most appropriately named show in all of television.
Way too early. It's way too early.
Naira is a denizen of those early hours over there too. So I just wanted to welcome Anthony. Anthony's an old friend. I want to welcome Anthony to Trailblaze because obviously this week there's a lot going on around the Epstein Files, as we've been talking about here. And we want to talk a little bit about the politics, both internally at the Department of Justice, how these things get sorted out, and then externally, what is happening in the MAGA movement. So, Anthony, if you could just give us a little scene setter, as much as you know, about this memo that came out from the Department of Justice and the FBI together, saying that there's nothing to see here, nothing to know, everybody move along.
What's so interesting about this memo is that it was unsigned, right? No one had any gumption or any, confidence, I think, or I think perhaps they were just nervous about the blowback that they would get from the MAGA faithful if they put their name on it. But this is really, if you want to step back here, this is really a problem of Donald Trump's own making, right? When I think about Trumpism, conspiracy theories themselves, much broader than Jeffrey Epstein, are foundational to Trumpism, right? If you rewind the tape to Donald Trump's emergence on the political scene, Jamal, you know this, Naira, you know this as well. It started on the national political scene with birtherism, right? That's how Trump rose to national political prominence. And of course, the biggest conspiracy, I would say, of the last 10 years is the big lie of 2020 election, that he somehow won the election and, Joe Biden stole it from him, right? That was disputed by more than 60 courts, his own attorney general, others within his administration debunked that. But if you look back to this particular conspiracy theory about Jeffrey Epstein, what makes it so interesting to me are I have two kind of foundational pillars. One is that Donald Trump knew this guy, right? This is not some guy he didn't know, right? This is a guy who, they were videos together, their photographs together. The Washington Post reported that they flew from New York to Palm Beach together. They were neighbors together. Donald Trump called him, I think in 2002, a terrific guy, said he was very fond of the women, including some of the younger ones. And so, you hear all of this stuff and you're like, okay, this guy actually has a intimate knowledge of who Jeffrey Epstein is. That's the first thing. And then the second foundational pillar is that this entire mess started on Donald Trump's watch, right? Think about it. Jeffrey Epstein was rightly charged, rightly arrested on Donald Trump's watch in his first term. He was jailed in Donald Trump's first term, and he died in Donald Trump's first term, right? And instead of letting the process play out, what did this guy do? Donald Trump, he was tweeting conspiracy theories on the day of Jeffrey Epstein's death. And then he gets out of office, and what do we see? Him fanning the flames even more. And now we have a situation where we're years after the fact, and the dog has caught the proverbial car, right? That's where we are right now.
So along that line, dog catching the car, and this long setup to this.
Right.
so many times that Trump said that there has to be something to reveal. So many times that the current Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has said that there are tapes, hundreds and hundreds of hours of tapes. And then she said she was looking at the documents on her desk today. Right, all of these
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? What are you doing?
Right, and then to have a memo that comes out saying there's really nothing to see here. So from your perch, having been the person who manages the public release of documents and works with an attorney general, what is going on over there?
So let me just start with there have been two main players over the last week or so in this mess. There's Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino. So
Boingo boingo.
What do you?
Boingo boingo.
Oh, I haven't heard that before. Let's call him that. Okay, so Pam Bondi. No disrespect to Pam Bondi. On paper, she looks qualified to be the nation's attorney general, right? Two-term attorney general of the state of Florida, longtime state prosecutor before that. But to be a good attorney general, you have to have independence. You have to have fidelity to the facts and the law and the rulings of courts, like all of those things. But it's that last part, respect for courts, where Pam Bondi lost me and everybody else who are pro-democracy and pro-constitution. You will remember she was on the ground in Pennsylvania in 2020 talking about fake ballots and mass cheating that didn't exist, right? Contrary to what the findings in multiple courts were. So that, to me, is disqualifying, right? Think about Trump's last attorney general, right? That's why he fell out of grace with Trump. But Pam Bondi, he has never apologized or changed her stance about the big lie, right? Yeah. And so Dan Bongino, real quick about this dude, the number 2 position at the FBI is traditionally a career FBI agent. It's somebody who has served 15, 20 years. And that's by design, because this person is the COO of the Bureau. It requires deep expertise. It requires, just think about a COO of a major corporation. Now, Kash Patel, during his confirmation hearing, Kash Patel rightly agreed or gave assurances to the FBI Agents Association that he would stick with that tradition. So, I got a lot of problems with Kash Patel. He said, you know what? I'm going to stick to this tradition. What happened? Donald Trump parachutes in and says, no, we're not going to have that. I want Dan Bongino to be the number 2, the deputy director of the FBI. And so what do we have? We have a conspiracy theorist and somebody with no FBI experience in the number 2 job. And so these are politicians and conspiracy theorists that are in these high levels of problems. So you can't really talk about the current state of play until you really define and delve down on who these folks really are.
All right. But then what? Right? Because we know they're there. We know that at least one of them, the deputy you were talking about, is really upset that more isn't being said, more isn't being shared. So what's the deal?
Well, so in a normal administration, you let facts and law lead the day, right? And you don't talk outside of that, right? You let the facts speak for themselves. Now, there are extremes to this situation, right? In Merrick Garland's Justice Department, he was a Boy Scout. He followed the letter and the spirit of the law. One of the, I think, appropriate critiques on the Garland administration is that he could have done more. Not outside the 4 corners of an investigation, but he could have done more to explain the process that he put in place to insulate investigations from politics. But instead, Garland, more often than not, was buttoned up. And in that gap, that space, people began to put their own thoughts in here, right? So that's like one extreme. You don't talk you don't talk at all about anything about what you're doing. The other extreme is what we're saying here, where you have folks who are saying facts be damned. We don't care what the law says. And we are going to try to thread this needle where we give the MAGA faithful some of what they want, but the facts don't support it. So I think, Nair, the way out of this for them, I think, is to try to kick the can down the road. So I would say maybe before the end of the week, I think they're going to appoint a special counsel of some sort, right, to just kind of relieve the political tension that they themselves have created, and that in and of itself is political, right? There's no need to appoint a special counsel here because they've already had a DOJ inspector general look at this and come to the same conclusion that the person who performed the autopsy came to the conclusion. And so, I mean, this is really, they've created this MAGA Frankenstein of sorts. And the only way, and they're afraid of this MAGA Frankenstein, right? The only way to feed it is to give it lies and conspiracy theories. And now they got to try to figure out how to not be consumed by this creation that they themselves have made.
So now we're getting to the interesting part for me, which is the Pam Bondi politics, or the MAGA politics, and what's happening with Pam Bondi. So Pam Bondi comes out. So in June, she says, she's on Fox News, and she says, the case is on her desk. She's arguing whether or not she's talking about the files on her desk, the list is on her desk, whatever. The case is on her desk, and it's horrible, and it's going to be, explosive and all that stuff, right? So she says that in June. So then they come out July 6th with this memo that says nothing to see here. The president, in a cabinet meeting where she's being questioned by reporters, basically covers for Pam Bondi and tries to, give her some space and says, oh, don't blame her for this, which raises the question to me: who's covering for who? Right? Is the president covering for Pam Bondi, or is Pam Bondi covering for the president, and now he owes her something? Because the forces of MAGA have been coming for her, including Charlie Kirk and that whole gang over the last weekend, who've been attacking her. All the MAGA kind of bro squad, and even Megyn Kelly and others who've been attacking Pam Bondi. It's funny, she's taking on all the weight, and Trump is still sticking by her. The question is, for me, can Trump afford to fire Pam Bondi, or does he really have to stick by her because she's the one who's covering for him, or covering for some of his friends who may have been implicated by what's in these files?
Yeah, I think he sticks by Bondi. Because Bondi has been a loyal soldier to him, and when I compare Pam Bondi to his first two attorneys generals, Jamal, like, they were both conservative Republicans, right? But they both had lines that they wouldn't cross for this man. Right. You remember Bill Barr. We talked a little bit about the big lie. Barr refused to go along with Trump's big lie. The attorney general before him, Jeff Sessions, appropriately recused himself from the FBI investigation of Russia interference in the 2016 election. And not only did he recuse himself, but Trump wanted him to shut it down. He didn't do it, right? And so Trump learned a valuable lesson between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0. Which is that people, we've heard this before, people are policy, right? And so now we have people, he has in Pam Bondi, somebody who is absolutely loyal to him. And I would almost say, guys, that loyalty isn't strong enough a word, right? We all have loyalty to our families, right? For example, spouses have loyalty, one spouse to another. But what he has in an attorney general and Kash Patel as FBI director, he has people who will be blindly obedient to him, despite what the facts are, despite what the law demands. Blind obedience is what we are seeing playing out. And just to button this up, Jamal, I think that's why he's going to end up keeping Pam Bondi, because she's blindly loyal to him.
Yeah, and I bet another Senate confirmation hearing isn't exactly what they want to do.
Same thing of why it's easier to keep Pete Hegseth there than have to go through a whole nother round, right? Because at the end of the day, they'll both go out and say what Trump wants on television. I just don't understand how they thought, after all the buildup, dropping a memo like that on a Monday would actually help them, right? So what Did they just think people would listen and forget about it?
And it wasn't a good rollout, right? We just saw it took 72 hours for the president to call Charlie Kirk, right? Like, well, why wasn't Charlie Kirk on the top of your call list, right? I mean, like, there are people, if you're gonna drop a memo, you have people that you know are influential within your community. You reach out to them, you explain, like, they could have nipped this in the bud, but I don't think they were braced for the reaction that we saw, that I think reached fever pitch over the weekend, particularly at the Turning Point USA conference. Did I say that right? You know, they just happened to be gathered right as this stuff came out.
Well, you know what it says to me? I got to tell you, Trump from the very beginning has been awkward about this, right? When he was asked the question during the campaign, would you release the RFK files and the JFK files? Sure. The UFO files? Absolutely. Big national security secrets. I'll do it all. What about the Epstein files? Well, you know, we got to be careful about that because you don't know who got up in there. That's like a little something we get. We need some more due diligence, right? So he's been careful about this, and then they have this sort of clumsy release the other day. Look, I don't know what's in there. I don't know what it is. But let me just tell you, my sniffer is going off. There's something about this that the president is uncomfortable about. Pam Bondi is the president's toady. She is making sure he doesn't get sideways, or his friends don't get sideways, or somebody else they care about doesn't get sideways. And I just think sooner or later there will be more about, maybe not so much about Epstein, but about how Trump and Bondi and this gang tried to keep this thing, you know, quiet, and maybe they didn't even talk to the people who run the communication shop, right? Like maybe they didn't even like go through the process because they didn't want a lot of people to know what they were up to. I don't know, but I got to tell you, it just seems fishy.
I will tell you this about the comm shot. Apparently, CNN did some reporting on this. It sounds like Stephen Miller is very involved in DOJ public affairs, which is not surprising for those of us who know Stephen Miller. But that's just another data point on just a departure from the norms. When I was
I don't know
at
if you
DOJ,
know this. I don't know if you know this, Anthony. When you read DOJ, obviously we've been friends for a long time. When you read DOJ, I said casually in a meeting when I was in the White House, I said casually in a meeting, "Oh, I just talked to my buddy over at DOJ to try to get some scheduling thing. I was just trying to understand like what was going to happen, some release that came out, and when it, trying to get the back." And they were like, "You did what? You talked to who?" And so they were like, "You can't talk to the Department of Justice. It was a piece of public information. I just wanted to get like, what did you got? What day did you guys release some document so that I could have it in my folder?" And they were like, "No, you can't call them. Don't call them. You can't call them. Talk about anything public. I mean, anything official." That's the level of scrutiny in the Biden White House that we were under, to not communicate with the Department of Justice. That is not the case in the Trump White House.
That is not the case. I can count on one hand the number of times when I was in my seat when I talked to Jen Psaki, right? And it was on a policy matter. And that was that. And, listen, I remember talking to a counterpart at another cabinet agency, and they said, half jokingly, half not, they said, we need one of those White House contact policies over here. They were, White House comms was all up in the grill. So, it's a good and bad thing, I suppose.
Well, if the idea is that the Department of Justice exists for the people, right? It's the people's attorney general, not the president's. The president has his own general counsel sitting there in the White House. Well, apparently, not only do the people, but his people want more answers. They want these files released. Personally, I'm like, this guy was smart enough to not have all this stuff written down. It's not like there's a little black book that's going to be sitting there. But again, people think it is because the people in charge now said videos and files and all of this exist. So if he's not going to fire Pam Bondi, what is the way out of this? Do we end up seeing some kind of, like you said, is it a special counsel investigation that then does what? That lasts for the next 3 years until a Trump administration is over? Like, I don't understand the calculus here.
Right.
Or we're not playing calculus. Is that what it is? Where it's people trying to do subtraction and addition the wrong way. Is that what's happening?
So Trump lives to fight another day, right? I don't know that he is looking you know, 5 years down the road, right? I think,
Right.
right, go back during this last election cycle, right? His goal was to not get convicted in, you know, what any of his federal trials, right? And so he was playing the short term to get to the medium term.
Mhm.
And that's where we are now. And I think to an extent, they're still trying to figure it out. ABC News did some reporting on Monday where they found out that the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and the FBI Director, not the Deputy FBI Director, were at the White House most of the day on Monday trying to talk or figure out their way out of this. I suspect they're going to end up trying to kick it down the road. But I will say this: I have been somewhat critical of congressional Democrats because I think Democrats have a tendency to overthink things instead of moving sometimes. But there are congressional Democrats who are doing what they should be doing. I think Mark Veazey down in Texas, Hank, is it Johnson from Georgia?
From Georgia, yeah.
They are both introducing resolutions or bills to try to get the entire files released. That's the type of stuff that they should be doing, and it's going to put the Marjorie Taylor Greens and those type of people in a pickle. Because they're caught between their base and caught between doing what Donald Trump wants them to do, and which is to move on from this.
Well, even Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, says so demanded the release. So you know the Democrats smell blood when all the folks you mentioned in the leadership are all circling around trying to and go after it. So
right. But yeah, man, this is a mess of their own making. You know, if they had been quiet and let the facts and the law and the norms play out without trying to extract political benefit, without trying to advance this false notion of a deep state of people involved in some cabal of you know whatever, then they wouldn't be in this situation.
Right, which also means they wouldn't have that support that got him to be president to begin with, because it is all based on conspiracies.
Right, it is. So the last thing I'll say, I think in closing, I'll say this. You all remember when you were growing up, Jamal, you grew up in Detroit, so I know you know a version of what I'm trying to say. Like you had this kid in the neighborhood.
You know, Jamal's older than me, right? We talk about that. I want to make sure you know this too. He's older than me.
Right. So listen, Jamal, growing up in Detroit,
Anthony's older than you too, by the way. I'm gonna just put that out there.
I'm okay with that.
I am.
I'm okay with that.
You're right. You're the little sister on this one.
So do you remember growing up, there was this kid in the neighborhood who would always just talk a lot of smack and couldn't back it up? That is what Donald Trump and his team have done with these Epstein files. Right. They have let their mouth write a check that their ass can't cash. And we're starting to see that play out, you know, from their base.
All right. Well, Nayera has got a couple of kids who are out here running these mean streets of Maryland. Mean streets of Maryland, facing down bullies.
And getting safer and safer because of the crime reduction strategies of the mayor of Baltimore and the governor of Maryland.
Thank you.
Always on message, even when I'm not on payroll.
Well done. Well done.
I know. Believe me, my kids ain't exactly in the mean streets of Jersey either. So so we're going to let that go. Anthony, thanks for joining us. It's been fun to have you here today.
All right. Very much enjoyed it. See you guys.
All right. Thank you all.